Trevor was hitting me up today after work, and I was pretty tired. And Trevor said, "What are you doing right now? Like, what's your plan?" And I said, "It depends on what you got for me." I thought you were gonna say, like, come to spar or like something. I was ready to go, but I was just winding down, having a beer actually with my partner at work.
We had a podcast.
And then he goes, "We have
after a beer?"
That's his
last
lifestyle.
time I had 3
okay.
hours of sleep and 10-hour work
This guy
day.
will have 2 or 3 beers and show up
that's brazen.
and do 6 or 7 rounds.
But
It's the Irish, it's the
but
bloodline.
he told me that we have a podcast going. I was like, perfect, that's
Okay.
great.
So.
And then I find out in the car who it's with, and it's with Doc Isais. Doc, we've been trying to get together for this for maybe a year, almost a year since the podcast started. Since the podcast started, we had been talking.
Yeah.
So now, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself to our audience? I think our audience already knows us. I want them to know you.
Yeah. So my name's Isais Wellington Smith, Dr. Isais Wellington Smith. I recently got my doctor status. And just like you were alluding to, throughout that whole course of a year, we kept missing each other because I was actually writing my dissertation. And so, when you're in that kind of, space, you got to really kind of manage your time and really do certain things. And I was like doing 8 to 10 hours writing. Wow. So it was a lot of time that I was doing, but yeah, I mean, I'm glad I'm here. I'm glad we got an opportunity to make it happen, So now that I'm done, my time's a little bit,
And what was your dissertation on? What was the main thesis?
I focused mainly on professional boxing, but mainly from the coach's perspective. So I did a participant observation, and I was looking at, my main interest had a lot to do with like race. So essentially like how race is performed, culture and identity. So like the culture of boxing and what that means for, a fighter's identity, but also, the coaches and how they sort of help fighters gain their identity through the sport. And then I looked at, boxing styles, kind of the difference between this old school, new school coaching and what that means
and how
for
styles
the culture
change
now.
Culture by culture, no?
Yes, yeah, and so that's and so I definitely observed that in very strong, concrete detail because I mean, coming from California, you always hear about this Mexican style boxing, right? And so that's kind of where I started. I was like, well, what does this even mean, right? Mm-hmm. People are saying Mexican style boxing. What does this mean?
Triple G was saying it.
Yeah, well, yeah, and it's
became a great branding thing at that point,
especially here, right? And so now when we look at that and people are saying Mexican style and it's that marketable, people are trying to make money from it.
I was actually watching a fight with my dad not too long ago.
Yeah.
And my dad, I think, was trying to be maybe politically correct or whatnot, but he heard somebody say, "Oh, this guy fights with a real Mexican style." He said, I heard the commentator say that. My dad said, "How can he get away with saying that? What does that even mean?"
Yeah.
And I said, "Hey, hold on, Pod. Like, before you assume that there actually is something. There's a Mexican style."
You can't imagine it in another sport, though.
Saying that he fights in a certain way is by no means at all doing anything touching the boundaries of being insensitive with race. We're actually just describing a style. It's like a school of thought. Like he comes from Taekwondo, or he comes from Jiu-Jitsu. He comes from the Mexican style school of
we obviously have a much more broader understanding of that if you come from boxing. But you could just imagine people cringing if they heard it in hockey or football or baseball.
Unfortunately, you would hear it in hockey, but it'd be only heard in small circles.
In small circles.
It's a lot more racist, actually.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Soccer's
But I mean, I think you guys are touching on a really good point, right? Because when people hear, Mexican style, then there's a bunch of assumptions that come with it, right? And one of those assumptions that comes with it is this very significant stereotype of you're gonna just move forward, take blows, give blows, and it's gonna be a
take
bloody,
one to get one.
Yeah, it's gonna be this bloody match, and it's
walk him down.
Exactly, and so. That's kind of when we are discussing these topics of styles, that's kind of where I started because there is this real genuine belief in boxing, as we all know, that, that stereotypes are attached to certain groups of people, right? And so, typically, especially in Southern California, right, it's very diverse, but at the same time, it's still very segregated. And it's very
interesting
odd.
how boxing is, I've always thought, boxing is very race aware. In the sport of boxing, people are very aware of the race of their opponent and what they think, what the
expectation of the style that comes along with that.
Or have you ever been like have you ever been to some big gyms that are multicultural? You ever notice how the groups hang out in the?
It's very
like the Rock.
Yeah, it looks like a yard.
And we talked about that a lot.
At the Rock, it looks like a yard.
Well, I mean, at Wild Card,
the small ring is for the black people.
Yeah.
The large ring is for the Mexican people.
Yeah.
And I've never seen it.
It's been like that. You're talking about the black ring in the corner, right? Yeah, and then the one that's in the front, the red. Yeah, I mean and I think that's, in a lot of ways, because I've been in a lot of different gyms and I have definitely seen that. And so when we're talking about and I just kind of want to go back and, go right back to us talking about style, right? Because then in a lot of ways that has a lot to do with how people are thinking, right? Because now, if we can kind of see this segregation happening, now people are creating assumptions in what styles people are practicing in that sport, right? In boxing in particular. What style are they going to come with, right? If there's black people over here in the corner, and there's certain expectations that go with that. They're going to be movers. They're going to be dancing certain ways, showboating, right?
Fainting more.
Exactly. Fainting more, and I think dancing comes
more defensive minded, more slick.
Yes.
Is out of
exactly more slick, and these are kind of like adjectives that I bring up in my dissertation. I'm saying we have to understand that these are assumptions that are being applied, but once we start to get higher
Marvin
up.
Hagler, in fact, is everything that people associate with Mexican style.
Exactly, right? And that's funny because, we're talking about a black fighter in Marvin Hagler, right? And so in a lot of ways, it's not really expected.
He's coming to walk you down.
Yes.
He definitely has that style that people in Southern California would.
Exactly.
I mean, race is obviously a factor. Growing up in Southern California, I'm sure everybody's heard, as I'm sure you've heard, and so forth. They'll say, "Oh, he's black. He can't take a body shot."
Yes. Yeah.
Right. And this
Mexican coaches would love to tell me that. And
I
was kind of thinking to myself,
right. So this
body
trope
shots hurt regardless. I'm
It's a racist sort of trope that exists, and the same thing might be said on the other side, which is overwhelm him with speed. He won't know what to do. He'll freeze up.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So
I have a question. What do you guys say about white fighters? No.
Well, no, I think that's a really good point.
Don't let that white boy fuck you up.
Well, yes, that's exactly what it is.
Exactly.
And that was across, that was across. So my last chapter actually was a match between a black fighter and a white fighter.
Right.
And that was like the overarching, you cannot let this white boy beat you.
Right.
And there was a lot of assumptions that came with whiteness, and it was a heavyweight match. And so when he kind of came in, looking heavy.
What was the fight?
This was a fight that was just outside LA in Lancaster. I don't really. You
shouldn't use names.
Yeah, I don't use names.
He doesn't use names.
It's just
which
in
I
the
think
profession.
is great for academic, or even in real life, anyway.
Yeah,
I remember when Bernard Hopkins was
Kelly Pavlik.
No, was fighting the Welsh fighter.
You're talking about recently? Joe Calzaghe. Years ago. Okay.
Joe Calzaghe, and he said, I'm pretty sure it was this match. Yeah, it was Joe Calzaghe, and he said something in the press conference which I thought was perfectly fine. He said, I've never lost a white boy, and I'm not gonna let it happen today. And some people lost their shit with that. But I think
Joe beat him though. Right?
I think Joe did beat him.
He did beat him.
But it's a very close fight.
The thing about Joe is
Calzaghe was bad though.
The thing about Joe is
undefeated.
Yeah, he was bad.
The thing about Joe is he never lost a white fighter either. And honestly, if you're a white fighter and you're trying your best in a sport where you're not, there's not many whites.
Jermaine Taylor.
It's just as embarrassing to lose another white person.
Yeah, I mean, no,
then you're bottom of your own. Then you're bottom of your own.
I mean, again, though, now there's like a lot of again assumptions and stereotypes that are attached to whites, and for a long time, whites were in the American hierarchy like the dominant, right? And so I think that in the fight world where whites are the majority, and they very well are, especially American whites, it kind of changes, how people tend to think, right? Here is, a white fighter trying to come in and take over, you have to beat them to save face or whatever. And I think that, again, these are assumptions and these are how certain people tend to think. But the reality is, going back to it all, race is that significant, right? People are looking, before all of the money that was being made in, boxing today, a black versus white fight, in the past could create riots, right?
Jeffries versus
Jack Johnson.
Jack Johnson.
And so, that goes to show the significance of how race matters, right?
Yeah.
And so, when we look at, these sort of things, we have to keep in mind that it's operating, right? And it's always operating. And that's in a lot of ways what I was trying to bring out in my own work, that regardless, in terms of how we tend to think about, assumptions or stereotypes of the other race, it's still operating.
Well, that historical narrative has been there in the United States. You think about the Jeffries fight versus Jack Johnson, and when they lost, people lost their lives for celebrating for Jack Johnson. The Congress had actually got together and wrote legislation at that time that said you couldn't take the tape and travel over state line to show the tape to other black folks, seeing that Jack Johnson was victorious. You also had Jack London, the American writer.
Oh, that's right.
It came out and basically it pleaded with Jim Jeffries to come out of retirement to put more or less to put him in his place as a black man.
Exactly.
So race, as it evolved and more, we could probably look at it from a historical perspective and see that because you had an incredible amount of immigrants. And there was an influx into the United States that were looking for a new vessel of social mobility, particularly looking to fight their way out of their situation, that fighting and boxing was something that was still feasible. But as time sort of progressed, and white folks started to get away from boxing, especially combined with black fighters that were now all, allowed to fight white fighters. We see this whole new landscape that we're in today. It's hard to imagine, a white fighter today, and when a white fighter does come up,
it doesn't take long until it becomes the great white hope.
It's complicated too.
And that's a really good point.
It doesn't take that long.
That's
Tyson
a very
Fury
good point.
He's not seen as white by most folks.
Who's that?
Tyson Fury.
Actually, I think he is.
Really?
I think most people look
is.
at him as a gypsy.
No. I think he is looked at as white by most people. He's looked at by you and me as gypsy because we think oh, those gypsies can move. You and I are saying
Billy Joe.
But most people I know from school and whatnot
they're not
are big fans of Tyson Fury.
And he's an incredible fighter.
You gotta ask the question: is it because you get giddies up when you see a white fighter do well?
It's also.
Well, look at Lomachenko. I don't mean to cut you off, but look at Lomachenko, right? Like, I think if we kind of look at somebody like Lomachenko, just even bringing up that last name, like a lot of people are kind of like, well, iffy, but when you see him, that's a white fighter. Right?
But don't you find
he also
in the world of boxing
fights very different, huh?
Fights black, I hate
Dude, don't you find it interesting how in the world of boxing we see white, there's Russians and there's whites. We don't consider Russians to be white fighters.
Well,
they are white people, but we don't consider
the boxing world doesn't.
The boxing world doesn't consider
But
Russians
the general public does.
as white fighters. You know what I mean?
If you're
when
just tuning into
fighters,
TV,
you're thinking of
and you're from the outside world, they see Lomachenko as a white fighter.
I think.
He looks like he surfs. He's got a tan. He's got blonde hair.
Looks like he's from Newport Beach.
He doesn't look like the Russian that you would imagine from whatever.
But
you have a Russian.
I tend to think that again, like we're looking at boxing from, this is what we love, right? And we know certain fighters, we know their backgrounds and certain things. If you bring somebody in like that as a casual fan and they see a Lomachenko right up there, that's a white fighter. If he's up against, anybody else
Nicholas
of color,
Walters.
He's a white fighter, right? And that's a black fighter, or that's, a Latin fighter. And so America is very, it's very responsible for that, because America has been very much, coloristic, very much about colorism and where people fall on that spectrum.
Absolutely.
That one drop rule, it matters, whiteness, no matter if they're, foreign. So one drop rule, if is kind of a slave term. So when biracial, children were being, born into slavery, if they had one drop of black blood, then they were considered outright black. And so, this one drop rule that I also bring up in my work.
By the black community or by the white community?
By the white community. At the time, blacks were property. And so if that child came out.
Today, is that?
Oh, it's still operating.
Are they considered by the black community to be black, or considered by the black community to be mixed race?
I think, well, in America's perspectives, it would be mixed race, but blackness is the heavier one of the two, let's say. And I think that, and I mean, in a lot of ways, you're starting to kind of see that in other sports kind of creep in, like the NBA, right? And so how are certain players being categorized in terms of race? And it has a lot to do with the one black rule. Oh, well, this person's black, we know because he had a black father or black mother, and how these certain things are operating. So again, it's stereotypes of athleticism. My mentor, discusses that a lot. Dr. Scott Brooks, in a lot of his work, he's looking at this whole idea of, athleticism. And if there is this one drop rule or blackness attached to athleticism, what does that have to say in terms of, the stereotypes that come with it? And it's pretty problematic because now we're sitting here saying that, oh, well, these athletes are great because they're black, except there's a lot of time and a lot of effort and a lot of work and discipline and blood, sweat, tears that goes into having that ability, hours. Right? And so I say all this to say that, as race is operating, right, America's responsible for this. And so when we're discussing race and we're looking at these things, it's still managing all the time, right? Even going back to, what we were talking in terms of, can a black fighter be successful, without being an antagonist, right? I mean, I think that speaks volumes in terms of how blackness is viewed.
Don't know whether or not America has ever gotten behind a black fighter. Sugar Ray Leonard comes to mind, but he had looks that sort of pacified white America because he resembled Sidney Poitier. And he didn't have, I could never see them getting behind Roger Mayweather. White America. I couldn't see white America getting behind, Layman Bruce. A lot of people just come to mind and just they wouldn't. So looking at that, or even Deontay. Deontay right now is a phenom. I mean, we've never seen anything like him. And if anything, I'm always sort of in awe that he hasn't had the success that one might expect for somebody that has the accolades in which he does.
That version of white America that isn't ready to champion and embrace anything that's not like a Sugar Ray Leonard. That version of America is extremely scared of that version of a black fighter. Deontay Wilder is the scariest man to that type of
America's always had a thing with how they looked at the black fighters.
He's just a complete beast. He's looked at as almost written off by some as not a boxer,
but he's
because he has the hands to
he looks great in a suit. He dresses well. He's articulate. I mean,
he's
got a body like Michael Phelps, if not better.
That's
you mentioned colorism before, and I want to know what your thoughts are on this concept, being that Deontay Wilder, a much darker and less maybe
marketable.
He's
not being marketable by white America.
Versus like
even by comparison to AJ, the way that AJ is the UK treats AJ. And I've thought this, and I've
both
never
good
said
looking,
it.
both ripped.
But I always thought that if Deontay was in the UK, and AJ was here in the United States, that the UK would do a better job at selling Deontay.
I don't know.
And US would have a better job.
You think so?
AJ.
Perhaps.
You guys think so?
I don't know.
Like if the roles were switched, it would be different?
That's a hypothesis of is colorism at play.
It's a sensitive issue.
Within race, is colors is the scale to which
the blackness
America's ready for darkness
that Deontay has versus the blackness that AJ has, and that America probably would perhaps might be okay with AJ.
I think there's also like this pretty boy syndrome that gets added
with
to it,
Joshua,
right?
But
which can have a lot to do with color.
But Deontay's another guy that he's a great looking man. He's a good looking man.
But I mean,
but I think what Doc is saying is that the pretty boy, because he's good looking, but there's something about him that America
he's not
thinks
a pretty
he's
boy.
scary. He's not.
Deontay's
he's not
handsome.
pretty.
Anthony Joshua is a pretty boy. Right.
I would say
and is that colorism? Is that is the scale to it?
Well, I think that has something to do with it. I mean, I think now if we're looking at colorism and we're bringing it back to race, in American standards, the darker that you are, right, is considered the
less
threat,
desirable or
undesirable.
Right.
It's considered, subhuman in a lot of different ways. Taboo.
Well, I know white guys who have said to me, about like they haven't dated a white girl, but a lighter white girl is something maybe that they'd be willing to date if she was lighter black. So it exists.
With a black
the desirability, in scale of
again, I think
of skin tone is a real thing.
Well, I think a lot of people have been conditioned to think these things, right? Just based on, again, a racist history that we have in this country. And so, how people are conditioned to think about, colorism and, the darker skin being the undesirable, the more aggressive, the more, problematic.
Unruly.
Versus, like now moving into, the lighter skin tones, they're starting to become a little bit more desirable, a little bit more,
You're also being
better looking.
Inundated with images
exactly.
in supermarkets, on television.
Exactly.
The Gap is going to run a biracial child, but the Gap is going to run, a child that has a lot of melanin.
Yeah.
And that's just being. So we're looking at human consciousness. We're looking at consciousness of America.
And
it's being tailored and engineered for us to all of a sudden get to this point.
Of course.
When we're being very divergent, very honest, now we're looking at Deontay and we're wondering, hey, Deontay is absolutely successful.
Yeah.
But why is he not more successful? Because boxing has never seen anything like this.
I mean, and
the only thing I could think of is because of the blackness of Deontay.
That's well, it's not just Deontay, right? Like, I mean, we were talking about, Adrian Broner. We were talking about, Floyd Mayweather. I mean, these are darker skinned individuals, but in a lot of ways they're clumped together as being the antagonist, right?
Right.
And so going back to, your point, I mean, there's a lot to say there, versus when we look at AJ, right? Anthony Joshua is like super successful in the UK. I mean, he's not only, this boxing megastar, I mean, he's all over.
He's
posters,
getting money
he's
from
like modeling
sponsorships.
And so it's like, you don't necessarily see that much happening with Deontay Wilder, right? I mean, he's Deontay Wilder. He's knocking people out left and right. He got respect in the game, but you're not going to see him on magazine covers the same way as you
Deontay's not doing
AJ.
a Mercedes-Benz ad.
And exactly. Right. He's not doing, these dressed up suits and, looking sharp and, advertising for, certain companies, because again, there might be something to say there about colorism, about race.
And I think also brands in America haven't gotten behind high profile boxers in a while. You know what I mean?
They're getting behind Ryan Garcia.
But then again, that's another pretty boy syndrome here, right? Now we're talking something different. We're not, Ryan Garcia, the mini Oscar De La Hoya, right?
He's exactly the golden boy.
It's the same
boy.
And I've seen Canelo commercials too. Obviously, he's got a huge fan base. But I mean, for us to sort of, I don't want to give America a pass. It's another thing too. Clarissa Shields comes to mind. Who's a two-time Olympian.
A bad fighter.
Incredible fighter. One of the best women, if not one of the best women of all time.
Of all time, She's amazing.
She's talking about her financial.
I don't know how to say it. She always writes the hashtag GWOT, but I don't know. Greatest woman of all time. I don't know how do I pronounce it.
Yeah, it's probably get woke.
But all right.
She's privately spoken about that she struggled with finances before she has the success that she has today, especially in her amateur career and on her way up there after she won a gold medal. So if I was to, just to make a healthy comparison to maybe Marlon Esperanza, who had a cover girl contract and, but might have much more of a crossover appeal, especially for a minority.
Well, she got
unfortunately, in women's sports, not only is race going to be part of this discussion like we've had here, it also comes with sexuality and
of course,
beauty and things, and so
that's a very good point.
A pretty girl who is perceived as pretty by majority of the people publishing newspapers.
I'll say Clarissa had a fight. When she looks nice when she's out.
Yeah.
They could. I mean,
and not to be rude.
Serena Williams is a sex symbol. That's a reality. So I'm looking at a young Serena and I'm looking at a young Clarissa, and I'm seeing the evolution. Now Serena, that didn't happen overnight. We're talking about a decade plus sort of process of another black star from sisters from Compton.
Well, even then she struggled.
But she had to make it happen herself. Versus being in a position where she's there with just a catcher's mitt open and money's being thrown at her. So.
Yeah, I mean, those situations to me, I mean, and I kind of had mentioned it just before, but Clarissa Shields and Serena Williams, I mean, just for how successful they are and their dominance in the sport, I think. In a lot of ways that we see it as just being this phenomenal feat, right? For black women to cross, but not only are they women in sports that are essentially considered more manly sports, right? Not so much tennis as opposed to boxing, but. They're kind of getting hit with this double-edged
challenging
sword.
every status. Serena Williams challenged every status quo.
Oh my goodness!
In
all
her
the
tennis
time.
career, whether it be fashion or in it being all chastised. I watched her documentary, and they talk about her playing in the desert, a decade plus ago, and being booed by Americans against another French girl.
Yeah.
This is crazy. These are girls from Compton that live maybe 60 miles from Palm Desert, and they're being booed because.
How early in her career was this?
Oh, this is very early.
Oh yeah, they were young.
Because she's been on top of her game for more than a decade, right? She's been the best player in the world for more than a decade.
I mean, and she'll probably go down as probably one of the greatest.
I think she's the greatest
of all
tennis,
time. In terms of tennis players. I mean, she's up there.
Is she retired or is she just not competing?
She's still playing.
Is she's still playing, right?
No, she's still playing. Yeah, but again, I mean, she's been hit with a lot of different. I mean, she's been chastised over and over, right? Again, about her fashion. Again, about how dominant she is.
Braids.
Maybe she should tone it down.
Yeah.
She shouldn't dress this way.
They're trying to control her temperament.
It's just, and it's funny because these are narratives that are being attached to Serena's, to your Clarissa Shields, that aren't necessarily attached to some of the other women that could be more flamboyant in a lot of ways.
There's been other women in boxing that have acted out. And it's also, you're in a combat sport.
Yeah.
Adrenaline.
And that's a whole different world, right? But
and they're not necessarily being taken to task.
If you're going in there exchanging punches for a living, you're allowed to be as flamboyant as you need to be to get yourself.
Steve Kim is.
Yourself to sell tickets and to do do that, to get yourself up at that level that you want to be ready to fight. I mean, I give anyone a pass.
Steve Kim has been critical of Clarissa Shields.
Steve Kim, all right. So the whole Steve Kim versus Clarissa Shields Twitter beef thing is so ridiculous. Where Steve Kim is he's like the kid in class who wants to see another kid fail just so he could feel better about himself. You know what I mean? He's like he's like the guy. That,
what are some of the things he said about Clarissa?
He would basically just.
I'm not familiar.
He basically just ripped on her that she's never going to be a millionaire or she's never going to receive the step of financial success, and then would double down on it. And I don't have the exact tweets to quote at this moment, but there was a series of time where he was almost like it's almost like. You make a guess on someone and then you're happy in their failure, and it was about the financial status of she'll never become as rich as a male athlete.
It's sad because Steve is obviously, I think he's
and he's taking pleasure. He's taking pleasure in being right. You don't want to be right about that.
He's obviously a huge boxing writer, but that maybe perhaps that he would have enough self-reflection to look back at it and to say, hey, that nothing's wrong with this woman's craft. Nothing's wrong with her boxing. She is the best female fighter we've seen. In fact, when she talks about sometimes fighting the men, obviously I don't think that should happen, but she's a hell of a fighter. I enjoy watching her fight. Hannah Gabriels comes to mind, and she's exciting to fight. So when he steps out of his lane like that, part of me says that he's still capable and able to do that because she's a black woman.
Definitely.
And that it's somewhat fair game for him to say some things because you could take.
That's
it was a very beautiful. There was a very beautiful
Rousey comments.
Oh well, that's a whole nother. But
I mean,
that's a good point though.
We're looking. I understand that, but Ronda, when Ronda's at the top of the echelon, the top of her game, and loses,
she was
badass. It's another thing to take her to task because of a poor showing. That's what he's supposed to do. He's a boxing writer. Yeah. It's another thing to talk about whether or not a fighder is going to be able to be a millionaire. Yeah. That is petty.
Yeah, it is
because being happy in her failure to do so. Yeah. And being vindicated of being right. Mm-hmm. Shows your self-esteem is based on simply being right on a Twitter beef. And
well, I mean,
you want to see the girl achieve the best.
And just hearing about it,
I don't have
all. Is he being a hater, or is he because it sounds like there's certain sometimes it's just people just hating.
Yeah, a lot of people. It's his job. It's like a gym room. A lot of people want to be haters. Yeah, it's gonna get a momentum and
of course, or more follows or more.
Yeah, I know he has a podcast.
Yeah,
right. And Ronda Rousey was on the top of her game, let's say, but she was never on Clarissa level top of her game the way Clarissa is.
Who, Rousey?
Yeah, Rousey was.
Rousey was probably more. I mean,
she was a superstar.
So the thing about Rousey, she became a sex symbol.
But
I don't think Clarissa Shields is on that level.
There was people within reach. There was people within reach of her. With Clarissa Shields, there's no one within reach that has a chance of being there.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, well, I'm talking about on a more broader scale that transcends the sport.
Right, and I was talking, and I think we're alluding to the same thing. It goes to the beauty aspect.
Exactly. There's these beauty myths and how that applies.
But Clarissa is a good-looking woman. Yeah. Also, part of it is that it's looked at as scary and less desirable because she can kick your ass, kind of thing.
Yeah. I listen. Layla Ali was beautiful too, right?
Yeah. Of course.
I want to interject once, just for you guys are talking about Ronda, which is great. It's all about Amanda Nunes, and Clarissa Shields has specifically said she wants to fight
Interesting.
Amanda
I forgot. Yeah.
Okay.
So, Amanda
that's
said,
a good point.
I'm not going to fight you in the ring. You can come to MMA, which everyone is saying that she's afraid to fight her, but Clarissa wants to fight Amanda right now.
Oh, interesting.
That's right. And I think I want to give Amanda props. I remember her saying something to the effect of, I'm not going to be able to box her. She was giving her respect as she's the best boxer in the world. Yeah. I'm not going to be able to box her. Sure, she can come to the octagon.
I mean, there's race at
so they're being level-headed with each other in a sense.
Well, they're just two different. That's apples and oranges.
But outside of that, races for me, just to be honest with it, with the UFC, when the UFC really started to get its momentum, specifically at that time when they didn't have a lot of fighters of color, they definitely didn't have a lot of black fighters. There was a couple Brazilians that were doing jiu-jitsu, but they had sort of been weeded out. And when UFC really starts to do those huge numbers. A lot of the stars were white stars.
Yeah. You don't think that?
And I used to joke with my friends. I used to say once I said, give it 5 or 7 years, and when more people of color get involved in the sport, you're gonna have more people of color that start to win belts. Yeah. And I want to see then. Are people gonna, this belief of, because there was a trope.
Now we have matches.
There was a trope. There was a trope that was going on that was saying there's a lot of rules in boxing when it's a fight, and you have, I don't remember a lot of these guys, UFC guys. But when it's a fight and there's no rules, these guys are the baddest fighters on the planet. But UFC is sort of evolved, and we know race obviously when we think about the Conor McGregor, Floyd Mayweather matchup. Yeah. Conor's on a press conference. He grabs his crotch. He says, "This is for all my black female fans." Right. Could you imagine? If Floyd Mayweather had did the same thing, right? It's not.
Crucified.
It's not.
Oh, of course.
It's not
and it wouldn't end.
No, we can't forget Conor called Floyd a boy too. And said, "Dance for me, boy." Right, and then he wanted to sort of play ignorance is bliss that he didn't know as being from Ireland.
Because all of his fans also wanted to play ignorance is bliss. But they all paid because they were duped into thinking finally one of our white boys is going to be able to beat.
Conor McGregor, in fact, is the best example of the great white hope versus the greatest black fighter of his generation.
And it's also coming from a guy that sucker punched a dude in the. And like a 65-plus-year-old dude in a bar, he's just a wild cat. But I mean, I think when it comes to that, what he's doing, right? And he's using race as a way to kind of try to get into his head. And Conor McGregor, in a lot of ways, he does that. He tries to psychologically get into people.
For that matchup,
fed on race because he knew that race was going to be something significant here, right? That I could use this to either gain more fans or whatever. You know, or not fans, but to gain more people to want to see this fight.
It's no different than Trump that has a certain language, coded language that resonates with this constituency.
Yeah,
here you have this guy, you've got Connor, who understands America better than all these Americans that are denying that the sediment actually exists here in the country, which is saying, hey, I'm going to use all this stuff. Yeah. I'm going to appeal to you. Yeah. And then you're going to get, it's even to see, if you look at who Connor was, which was somewhat of opulence. And to look at our 45th president, who was somebody who's opulence, who had a gold toilet. Yeah. And you look at Connor's mannerisms, and you look at Donald Trump's mannerisms, and their boastful sort of nature, and their pretentious sort of ways, and their showboating, and which are both great showmen, Donald Trump and Conor McGregor. Yeah. Then I look at Floyd Mayweather, who's been not just chastised, but vilified, and frankly, the majority of America hates him. Yeah, and he was an Olympian in the 1996 Olympics. Yeah, he fought for the United States of America for free in the 1996 Olympics, gets a silver medal. Yeah, and I just can't imagine when any other country rooting against a silver medalist who got robbed of the gold, mind you.
Oh yeah, he got robbed badly. Right.
Because what happened when he was with Top Rank? Because
that's how much race is still a factor in the United States.
When he was with Top Rank and he was still trying to play the good boy, pretty boy Floyd. He wasn't making enough money, and Oscar De La Hoya was Bob Arum's #1 priority. Yeah, and he was a side character. He was in the background until he became
Oscars.
Until he became
in a lot of ways. Yeah. I mean, well,
So he, in a sense, it's unfortunate that he can't play the what do you call it in wrestling? The face, Daniel, the positive guy. Face. Yeah. So unfortunately, they can't do that. But in some ways, he's genius to be able to know that he can come out with the hand he's dealt. He can come out and still be the richest boxer of all time.
But it wasn't genius. I mean, listen, I think that's unfair. It's genius because we got to remember
he did it better than anyone else.
Floyd didn't make a lot of money for I want to say the first 7 or 8 years of his career. Yeah. That's pretty.
By the way, we have to define what a lot of money is, though, because I don't know what those numbers.
He was only making think about it like this: Bob Arum bought him out of trouble for I want to say $1 million. Yeah. So now you're looking at a fighter that's worth $1 billion, right? Yeah. And you're thinking, well, what is $1 million? Is a lot of money, but to get him out of his contract obligations.
Who was his first contract with?
His contract was with
no.
He was with Jay Prince. And he's with Top Rank with Bob Arum.
That's right.
So I only remember the Top Rank era. I don't remember Jay Prince. I don't
Jay Prince. Rap a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. He was,
not a promoter anymore.
Andre Ward. Steven.
That's all Jay Prince.
Shakur Stevenson. He's got.
Shakur Stevenson is Top Rank.
Brian Jennings. No, he's a manager.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So, but
he's the money guy.
Shane
Mosley. This is back to that business model of the.
Jay Prince is in fact probably one of the most dangerous men in the South. He's a guy that you don't want.
He's a guy that you don't want. He's well connected.
Jay Prince could have his own episode.
For real.
But regardless of looking at Floyd and his transition as Pretty Boy Floyd to Money Mayweather. Yeah. There's this moment where America sort of failed him because Floyd had actually won his championship against. My trainer, Gennaro Hernandez, Chicanito, his first belt. Yeah. And you look at, there's things that I know that Floyd had told Chicanito, which he'd whispered to him, Mr. Hernandez, thank you for the opportunity. And it paid off years later when Gennaro had cancer. He paid for Gennaro's funeral. But he also had told Gennaro that I used to have your poster in my room. I'm so grateful. And he fell to his knees crying when he won his first championship, right? And he thanked God. Right? And he thanked everybody for the opportunity. Everything that we would assign was being a humble fighter in the United States of America. And Floyd did things that mimicked and resembled what Oscar De La Hoya had did. Yet he never got the fans behind him. And the only reason was, to keep it 100, is because Floyd back then, Floyd young in his career, was dropping people with jabs. He was a damn highlight reel nonstop. He wasn't
It irks me me when I hear people say, "Oh, Floyd Mayweather, he's never knocked anyone out. He danced."
My goodness.
I was like,
he was killing people.
I was like, I'm sorry, but
you've
only seen Floyd Mayweather since Marquez and after.
Watch Floyd Arturo Gotti. Oh wow, like the late Arturo Gotti. I mean, but if you see that fight, I was just nothing but highlights. I mean, it was just straight dismantling, and
how was just people not get behind him? I mean, they're not getting behind him because
it's that Andre Ward
it's
style that didn't.
It's not even. He's not fighting like Andre Ward because he's not even cerebral.
He's attacking. I mean,
he's a cerebral, but it's a surgeon's attack.
The whole get on knees and pray to God and think. Like that aesthetic didn't excite people.
I don't think that you could be
the way Andre Ward didn't excite people.
A black fighter in America and make it without being the nigga that they love to hate.
Well, no, I think that's a great point.
I cannot. You look at even bringing up Andre Ward and seeing whether or not Andre Ward being a man of the cloth, Christianity, always articulate, saying the right things, being a good example. And yet, if we're looking at his career earnings versus when Mayweather decides he's going to become what America hates the most, this historical narrative. And part of it is like you said, the double-edged sword is that Mayweather took all that hate and manifested that into hundreds of millions of dollars, if not $1 billion. But it's also to say something about a fighter, Floyd, who was the best fighter of our generation from the United States of America, who was a former Olympian. And time after time after time after time, we watched this fighter fight other countries' countrymen, and we watched flags wave in the audience of the event with no American flags, with Argentinian flags, with British flags, with Mexican flags, with Filipino flags, and so.
There's a lot to say there. There's a lot to say there. But go ahead.
There's one thing, and I'm not purposely getting away from Floyd Mayweather conversation, but bringing up the flags thing, and I was wondering if that was something you ever explored in your study.
Of course. Is
that what I think is really interesting in the world of boxing is that there's so much cultural tie and there's so much importance with heritage and a fighter because we come from a sport where we don't have like the Los Angeles Dodgers. Like there isn't going to be a team that will still be there when the players change. You get behind a fighter, you maybe get a Chavez fan your whole life, and then he's got. So what's interesting is that these cultural identities are so tied with the fighters because in a sense that's your only home team you can root for is let's say whoever the Puerto Rican fighter of the era is on Puerto Rican Flag Day in New York he'll sell out he'll sell Madison Square Garden and it's just this interesting thing that we have in boxing that seems to be more important than like in basketball like people don't go to
I don't see American flags behind black fighters.
I know what I was talking about. I'm not talking about black fighters.
You're talking about nationalism.
I was talking about nationalism in boxing. I'm just talking about because going back to what his thesis is about things other than.
It's interesting. I see what you're saying. We don't have a lot of.
I was just curious as to
why why are Americans missing?
You were talking about
that sentiment, that nationalism sort of sentiment, especially in boxing. I mean,
because nationalism in America gets dangerous.
Well, it's not just that.
It becomes.
I think you also have. You also have your Colin Kaepernick kind of perspectives in terms of the American flag, and how blacks aren't really represented under America in the ways that they feel they should be, and I think just kind of thinking in those terms, right? I mean, there's still a lot of racisms. There's still a lot of discriminations, oppressions that happen to people of color in this nation, and so, in some of the interviews that I've done with some fighters and some coaches, they're like, I'm not gonna stand for this, when I feel as though I'm being treated or mistreated, and why would I, support, this when it's, a system that's actually pushing me down or a system that's actually holding me back. And so, when you kind of empathize with that or you see it, you kind of recognize like, oh, okay, like it makes sense, like when you don't feel like you're being treated well or you don't feel like you're being, taken seriously, right? Then, that distance factor is like, well, I'm gonna do my own thing because, you know, this country ain't gonna do a damn thing for me. I'm gonna do it myself, right? And so in some of the interviews that I've had with people, that's how they felt. Like, I'm not gonna support that. I'm gonna do my thing, right? I mean, I know what country I'm at. You know, it's not like I really had a choice in the matter, and you know, I might have some respect here and there, but why would I do that? You know, and you know, what's the incentive for me behind that, right? To say I'm a resident, you know, for some people that's not enough.
You know, you could look at Jamel Herring, comes to mind.
Yeah.
And he's very in touch with his military background as a former Marine.
Yeah.
And obviously, always has the flag, and sometimes he has the Marine Corps do the hymn before he comes out.
Yeah.
But you know, to know whether or not, to be honest, looking at his trajectory of his career, and to know whether or not this is something that paid off and made him a star. I can't say that it didn't, but I certainly can't say that it did either.
Yeah.
And I think that when we're looking at, you know, if you have, we have a lot of young fighters of color, a lot of young black men out of this gym here, that, you know, obviously all have the intent to go pro.
Yeah.
They all have the intent to be a star. They all, you know, they all want to see their names in lights. They want to sell at the MGM Grand, Staples, and so forth.
Yeah, that's the goal.
If I'm looking
get to the league,
looking at a kid, a young man,
yeah,
and I'm saying to him, I say, hey, listen, I know that there's an algorithm out there that works, but that might be in defiance of your being. That might be in defiance of your character.
Yeah.
That might not be who you are, because you might be a soft-spoken, you know, young man. You might be very polite. You might, you know, look after, you know, your loved ones, and you want to make sure everything about you is Or you can say, you know what? I know what works. I know what we can commodify.
Yeah.
I know that we can monetize.
Yeah.
If you start to act like, you know, not to say that Adrian Broner is acting like that. That's unfair to Adrian.
Yeah.
But if you take on a persona that's more aligned with the streets, that's more aligned to, or just acting up, that I know that white America is going to pay. And same thing, I can't, not just white America, it's just unfair to white America. That boxing fans as a whole, whether they be Latino or Armenian or white and so forth, are gonna, and some black people too, are gonna pay to watch you lose.
Yeah.
And you're gonna get money to want to watch you lose.
I'm gonna counter that
which is going to funnel cash into your.
I'm gonna counter that with
fear is marketable.
Only works.
Fear is marketable.
That's right.
Right, and when we look like, and I definitely see your point. Right, if you could say that, right, and that algorithm of you being the antagonist would work, what are people buying into in terms of that antagonistic persona? And I would, you know, bet dollars to donuts that people are buying into that person losing. Right? People are wanting to pay the pay-per-view.
He's a billionaire because people wanted to see him lose.
People wanted to see him lose, right? And they weren't buying into this,
it's not the street
Floyd
thing.
Mayweather is, you know, and I do think there's a street culture involved.
There's
a culture there.
Let me speak for the what people in conservative America, it's not that they want to see the street guy lose, it's that they want to see the black guy that's richer than them lose.
That's what scares me. I think that's a piece.
You know what I mean?
That's if they had self-reflection.
Yeah.
That's what I think is coming out.
It doesn't come out like that. What comes out like that, which is, you know, is
the
hypocrisy of it all, right? You're gonna vote for the 45th president, Donald Trump, who has a golden toilet, who's the most gaudy man ever.
Who says he's blue collar.
Right. Who redid the Air Force One to be adequate, you know, with all the bells and whistles.
Yeah.
And it literally is just this, this whole, everything that you want to associate with this, you know, being just filthy rich and yada, yada, yada. Then here you have a black fighter, you got Floyd Mayweather, who's doing some of these same things.
Yeah.
But the sentiment against him is like, oh no, we hate him. He's too flashy.
Yeah.
He talks too much. Can't stand his bravado.
Again.
He's gonna be poor.
Yes.
I hear this all the time.
Yes.
I've never heard anybody say this about the 45th or Conor McGregor.
Yeah.
Nobody's ever questioned Conor McGregor's investment strategy.
Yeah.
But they all the time are going to question, oh, well, you know what? He's going to end up like MC Hammer. He's going to end up like Mike Tyson. He's going to end up like Evander Holyfield.
Yeah. Again, it's I think that word hypocrisy is like a very, you know, strong word, right? Because in a lot of ways, I think that's how people also feel, like, you know, about the American flag. You know, when they, are feeling that way. I want to go back to that because I think that, you know, under the guise of race, that it's that significant. But when we're going back and discussing Floyd Mayweather, right, you're absolutely right. I think that that's a big thing, right? You are essentially like, in a way, fighting that system, right? And if it means you being an antagonist and it's marketable, right? Not only are you making a statement and you're fighting that system, but you can use that to your advantage. And I think that's what Floyd was essentially doing, right? Fighting against this system, making money off of it, but also understanding that as a black man, that's the antagonist, you know, you're gonna have a lot of people sort of beaming a number of different hate, but at the same time exposing that hate and saying, well, you're the fool, right? Because in the back end, not only am I, you know, creating this persona to be antagonist, I'm also showing the true colors of how America responds to this, right? And so in a lot of ways, it is ingenious, right? He was able to find that algorithm, expose how people tend to think, I mean, McGregor included, right? And say, okay, well, this is gonna make me a profitable asset here. And I could utilize that to my advantage later on down the road. Now what, he's a promoter, he promoted himself, right? He figured out that system and made it work for him.
Another sociologist comes to mind, which is Harry Edwards, right?
Okay, yeah, Harry Edwards, definitely.
So
my man.
At Berkeley, right?
Can you give me a quick summary of his work? I don't know Harry Edwards.
Well, Harry Edwards is kind of considered like this father of the sociology of sport. So he really looked at, you know, sports in terms of race, and he went into a number of research essentially saying that, you know, blacks in America are considered the preferred workers. And what he meant by that was essentially that blacks in America are taken out of the inner city and then they are exploited in so many different ways, yet they don't get paid the way that they should be when they make these big businesses. Collegiate sports is like one of his main.
Because this message is from it starts in the 1960s.
Yes, yeah.
So you can be mindful at that time of the discrepancies of what the owners were making versus what the players were making.
Exactly.
So you're talking about
not only that, but he was also the mastermind behind the 1968 Mexico City Olympics with the fist in the air. Yeah, he was one of the guys in that protest that sort of made that a reality. And so that iconic photo, I mean, he was one of the major players in terms of making that a thing.
And remind me of those two athletes that had their fist, what were their names?
There was John Carlos and Tommy Lee Smith. Yeah,
and so he had been mentoring them. They had been talking,
so definitely
doing training and things.
Yeah. I mean, this is also the Black Panther party.
Because he was out of the Bay Area, so you can imagine.
Out of the Bay Area. Merritt College.
Merritt College ends up. He's now a professor at Berkeley. He's been a professor at Berkeley for many years.
I think he's emeritus now, which means he's retired, but he still kind of has his hands in there. But Revolt of the Black Athlete is probably one of my favorite works. I mean, I mentioned that in my dissertation a number of times, and I mean, his work is definitely very influential to myself, my mentor, and just a number of people out there in the sociology of sport.
What's this sociologist's name again?
Harry Edwards.
Harry Edwards. Yeah.
You can't miss him because he's like 6'6".
Yeah, he's a big guy.
Big shaped.
Is he still writing? Is he still doing things? Or?
Maybe not so much now. I think he's doing like consulting for like the San Francisco 49.
He was with Kaepernick.
He definitely was consulting Kaepernick. You know, speaking of the American flag, right?
So that's why I bring it up.
Did he consult Nike to?
I don't know. I don't know about all that, but
Well, even when,
but the message was the point, right?
When we think about Nike, it's obviously to know that at no moment do I ever think that Nike didn't do a sort of profit and loss sort of strategic decision based on is this going to pay off or is this not going to pay off?
Yeah.
This idea that Nike would make a decision based on equality or based on furthering civil rights or addressing police brutality,
of course
addressing driving while black, addressing black men being killed unarmed, at a ritual rate.
Yeah.
This is Nike made a decision what was best for them,
and it has done well.
Nike is very interesting.
To add to the goodwill of the company.
Yeah, they're also Nike giving money to conservatives.
Nike is like the gun seller that sold to both sides of the people for the war, right? And it's like, Nike, their message is one thing, and then they'll do another thing, and then they'll be profitable on both sides, right? And then all they got to do is take a step back with their hands up and go, "Oh, this happened."
That's a pathology of a corporation, which is a psychopath, right?
Like
it's gonna say, at the end, it's only gonna do what's in its best interest. It'll tell you what you want to hear. But at the end of the day, we're looking at the pathology. It's just not. It's a psycho. Nobody would want to be friends with a friend if it was a corporation.
Yes.
It would literally.
No, hell no.
It would say one thing to you and one thing to you.
Well, it would have bled you dry, and then it's like left you in the desert, with no water or something. And it's like, hey, peace out.
You're gonna be okay. You'll figure it out.
No, we're stolen the water rights and then sold you the water.
Oh yeah, or the mirage, and then
The reason I bring it up is there obviously are some parallels there.
Yeah.
With Kaepernick.
Yeah.
There's some parallels there. What you were talking about, the flag.
Yeah.
And us seeing it as a sense of nationalistic pride. Even when God. I was listening to Paul Mooney today. Yeah. Right? I woke up, I don't know why. And, I woke up and I was listening to Paul Mooney. It was early in the morning.
He's like hyper black, like he's like super black. Like I love his comedy.
Who designed the flag? Is it Betty Ross or?
Yeah. I think it's Betty Ross.
Betty or Betsy?
Betsy Ross. Yeah. So, anyways, it's a Paul Mooney bit, and I'm not gonna, but
you can find it.
He basically says that he could see behind the truth, which is that she didn't sew it at all. That black women sewed it. And that Bessie looked at the slaves and said, "How are you doing?" And then the slave said, "I've been up so late, all I do is see stars." And he said, "Well, put stars on it too." Right? So Paul Mooney is iconic. But we're looking back at this. We're looking at the consequences of an American nightmare, right?
Yeah.
It's certainly not. I think in America we have this premise of something that we like to hear, which is the American dream, but it's been the American nightmare for people of color, particularly black folks.
Yeah.
I mean, and at the end of the day, we're seeing these things come up over and over again.
Yeah.
They're not dissipating.
Yeah.
And there seems to be much more of a window dressing when you're addressing them. So it's like, well, everybody can feel like they're getting on the right page because perhaps Kaepernick makes a deal with Nike, which seems right, and Nike runs an ad, which is, has a feeling of social justice. Yeah. But at the end of the day, I can't look at you in the eye, and I'm certain you can't look at me in the eye and think that this has had an effect over implicit bias or police brutality or the dangers of being a black man or a black woman.
Of course,
And we're asking America,
Well, I think I think one thing that we really have to keep in mind is that the American flag is symbolic across the board. It's so very broad. Mm-hmm. But I think some of the things that people miss in terms of the point and why certain people feel so, distant away from the American flag is that for some people of color, that American flag is symbolic of pain. Mm-hmm. How they grew up, where they grew up, I don't know, about yourself, but every time I see, unarmed black men or unarmed, people of color being killed, I'm pained, and, for these things not to be addressed or them just swept under the rug over and over. This is a generational problem, right? And, only now in this era, which is an information era, that there's video of this, video evidence, and justice still doesn't come out of it. Again, for some people,
which is crazy because you could
pain,
you can think about folks
and
of color.
anger,
it's a slap in the
face.
And
I think that's why some people feel that way, right? It's a pain, it's an anger. It's like
people saying, if I had proof, if I could show you what is really going down, by video, and now you have something that should be undisputable, which is video, and then you have people saying, well, I don't know what transpired 30 minutes before.
Exactly.
I don't know what is not to know about, the one that I always think about is the nurse for the autistic.
Oh, yeah.
Right, and he's laying down, and there's a young man that has autism. Yeah. He's not young, but maybe 23, 24.
That was ridiculous.
And he's playing with the toy truck. and the nurse is laying down.
Yeah.
And the nurse has a lot.
He was ordered to lay down, if I'm not mistaken.
He's
right?
also worried about his patient.
Yeah.
He says, please don't shoot my patient. My patient, that's a toy truck. He has autism.
Yeah.
Yada, yada, yada.
Right.
And I want to say it's in Florida. The officer shot him while he's laying down.
Yeah.
And he shoots him while he's laying down. And the nurse, where it landed, still has enough in him where he says, why did you shoot me?
Yeah.
And the officer's replies, I don't know.
Yeah.
So when we're looking at Kaepernick and why Kaepernick made the sacrifice that he made, which was, and at that time, we're looking at context of time, which was one after the Texas, Trayvon obviously comes in, Ferguson. It's just one after the other.
I mean, I live right down the way from Ferguson.
I can't breathe. And so forth. It's just getting one after another after another. And he says that he is going to make put himself out there and be a face for this and talk about what the flag is.
And it's so very flammable, right? Like there are pissed off people, there are people for it, and it's just like a big...
And what was ridiculous was I remember immediately there were people questioning his blackness after he did that. Like,
his ability.
They do that to Shaun King too. Because if you're light skinned,
poser, he's only half black, or whatever they were saying, and that's just distracting from the issue of what he's there to protest. He's there to protest police brutality, so don't take away his blackness from him. First of all, it's not even your job because when I had an Irish and an Italian flag at my pro debut, no one said shit to me. No, they could have called me a poser because I wasn't born in either one of those countries, but I had those flags. No one does that to every culture, but for some reason, Colin Kaepernick is like, you try to discredit his blackness, or discredit his statement, or his act of protest by saying he's only half black or whatever.
I mean,
it's just ridiculous.
But then again, I feel like that's a narrative that's always used when there's something out of the ordinary, right? Let's find something to attack, and then you're right, like move away from the actual point, which is what was the original protest, right? And we're gonna attack his ability to play the game. We're gonna attack his blackness. We're gonna attack everything else besides what the original point is.
And I remember.
Oh, you're against the military. Oh, you're against American rights, and it's not necessarily about these things, right?
Floyd, I know, has said a lot of things against Colin Kaepernick, which I don't agree with at all. I wish that Floyd would have put himself in a position to enable, folks from the black community or folks of color.
Floyd's more about him than he is about overall.
But putting that aside,
it's true.
A lot of folks.
The day after the Gucci scandal, he was posted with Gucci. Like he's more about.
A lot of folks of color want their athletes to put themselves in positions to speak up. Put their the entertainers to put themselves out there to speak up. So here you have Cap that does it. And the assumption is that half of America isn't going to understand. But what is incredible to me is that we have a nation that's still so racially polarized that we're still, here it is, that's 2018, 2017, 2019, right? But in 2020, because our nation is still so, racially polarized, that we still can't have dialogue. There's still no moment of where we're going to talk about, hey, look, at the end of the day, you got a bunch of unarmed people of color, black men specifically, and black women that are being killed, murdered, right? And you have to address this. And by the way, these are American citizens. If you really want to talk about the tenets of being an American and the American flag, how dare you not identify with what it is that we believe the red, white, and blue is supposed to represent.
Signify,
Supposed to signify. Supposed to mean to the people. So, but I could see this idea of what happened to Kaepernick and boxing and,
Well, I mean, I think, in situations like this, I mean, these are just reminders of how significant race is, how race is still operating. And you're right, like, there's not enough dialogue. And I think, going back to, thinking in sociological terms, this sort of racism without racists, right? Race is typically swept under the rug, and it's typically like, let's think about other things, or let's deflect it. Let's not really go into the root of that issue because it's too messy, right? And, in a lot of ways,
you got to have that awkward conversation.
You got to. I mean, right. and race is in a lot of ways that weird elephant in the room, especially in the sport of boxing, that nobody wants to address. Right? Everyone knows it's there, and they'll walk around it, and they could even tell you without their eyes open what the hell is in the room, but they don't want to discuss it.
Don't you think boxing is a little bit more race comfortable than outside of boxing world?
I mean,
it's like when a Mexican coach tells you he's not going to be able to take your body shots. No one's comfortable saying that outside of boxing.
Yeah.
In the outside world, no one's comfortable saying that kind of thing. Whether it's inherently a little bit racist or just incorrect.
Yeah.
Maybe so, but there's a something happens in this ring where.
Well, I mean, I feel like even some of those conversations, I mean, you're not necessarily having that with other people that are different from you, right? I mean, those conversations are happening, sure. But they're happening within those spaces, right? And it's you're not really having those conversations with people. To say like your opponent or somebody different from you is typically within that same context or the same space. Now it can happen.
Yeah, but you're not going to have Mayorga might have done that.
He was being an asshole when he did that.
Can you refresh my memory?
Mayorga did everything. He broke every racial, social.
Everything.
Patriarchy, nuclear family.
He was doing it all.
I didn't give a shit.
I only saw like 2 Mayorga fights.
Smoke a cigarette, blow it in your face, and call you a derogatory comment.
The height of it is when he told Oscar De La Hoya that he'd fuck his wife better than me. I mean, he looked at her, I'll fuck her like a real
Or when
man.
he slaps Shane Mosley's wife in the ass during the weigh-in. I mean,
Wasn't that all a hoax?
No, I don't know. It could have been.
I thought I read that was a hoax.
You really
still did it.
Oscar hated Mayorga.
Any other person would have been like, nah, I can't do that.
People hated Mayorga. Mayorga was out there doing some shit.
Oh, he was always talking.
He knocked him out, didn't he?
Oh my God, he got knocked out almost every time. But I mean, it's still like the context that he was doing.
But no differently. By saying a lot of things and then getting a reaction. Obviously you're looking at.
He's the ultimate heel, honestly, if we're talking about that.
Oh, Mayorga?
Yeah.
I could see that. I could definitely see that.
We don't have a Mayorga in boxing.
Because the heel's willing to lose.
Maybe.
The heel's willing to lose.
Al Bernstein moment is basically Mayorga's Oscar De La Hoya moment.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
You remember when he told Al Bernstein? Talking about you.
Yeah.
So.
Get out of here, man.
It's boxing. I think that there's a weird thing that goes on with it, particularly with men. And they idealize and want to fantasize their masculinity. And this trope of a lot of times I hear guys dumb it down. They literally believe that the toughest fighter is going to be the one that's the most successful in the ring. And so sometimes with that it'll be laden in race a little bit, right? If he would have sat there and exchanged with them, remember Fernando Guerrero? Is it Fernando Guerrero? No,
Robert Guerrero.
Robert Guerrero. Fernando Guerrero was Dominican. Robert Guerrero's dad with Floyd with "You Ran Like a Chicken."
Oh yeah! Oh my God! I was just talking about that the other day, but
he runs like a chicken.
So he's like, if you wanted to take a caricature of what you could see in a lot of Southern California gyms, it's a Guerrero's dad.
He was like the Pachuco looking guy, right? Like the cholo, like
exactly. He's a caricature of what you hear at so many gyms across Southern California. It's all that kind of narrative.
Yeah.
And it's kind of comical because he seems like a cartoon almost, but you'd hear that kind of stuff all the time.
Well, I mean, I think that's pretty telling, though, right? I mean, you're hearing all these things, and I think you're also hearing the stereotypes that go with it.
Isn't it amazing?
And like all these things, like it's very interesting because at the end it kind of gets derogatory. Not just with like race, but also with like
just in things
gender. Like you start hearing all these things about gender, women, and like all these different things.
It's amazing.
Yes.
It's amazing.
Boxing is not a safe space.
Oh no, you can get
triggered very easily,
very fast.
In a boxing gym, if you're not being mindful, you're gonna get triggered.
and it's funny because I'm a sociologist, so I tell all my colleagues, all my sociology colleagues over at Southern Illinois, I'm like, spend a day in a boxing gym and you will be pissed by the end of the day when you walk out. Just some of the things that are said and some of the things that are operating, you would just be like, whoa, there's a lot there. You know?
The things you can get away with at a press conference in boxing is amazing compared to the rest of the world.
Exactly. You can't, this is something you say all the time, he hits like a bitch. Right? This is very acceptable. You're saying or he's a pussy. Yeah. Right? These things are being said in the gym.
One of my favorite ones. One of my favorite ones that I always tell somebody is like, oh yeah, he's not gonna spar today. He's suffering from vaginitis. Right. It's like what? It's just certain things that come up, right? You know. So it's just.
You think when we look back at it, and I mean, we're looking at boxing, which is probably, I mean, if we're being honest with it, you know. And I'm just being honest here. You might appreciate this perspective that the people that are still boxing today are only boxing because they look at it as a vessel of social mobility to move up social class strata.
That's a very good point. Yeah.
So it could be literally you're coming from poverty. Yeah. And I always make a joke that Orange County can never make a world champion because they could figure 20 out. They could figure 20 different ways to get that Lamborghini. Yeah. Versus if you're right here in the east side of Long Beach, or you're in Compton, you're in Watts, you're in East St. Louis, and Brooklyn, and so on. That boxing is going to enter the consciousness in the first 5. If you see a Lamborghini, maybe play ball, you might be an MC, and so forth, right? But if we're looking at what boxing is, and knowing that it is something that is sort of this relic of what we're being told society isn't, but still is, which is, hey, if you're a young man and you're Deontay Wilder's trainer had made a comment on the Chris Rock show. What's his trainer's name? I can't remember.
I can't remember.
I don't know.
Oh God!
I didn't know Chris Rock had his own show.
Is it a podcast? HBO was a long time ago. But basically saying that is that boxing is never going to die as long as a brother needs a paycheck, right? Right. So because we're talking about academia here. Yeah. We're talking about a lot of things that are resonating, and you're going to encounter on campuses: safe space, triggered language. Even code switching and so forth. Yeah. And then you have this echo chamber, which is boxing gyms. Yeah. A bubble that is, if anything, I mean, it's like it's like a time capsule. It is a throwback to this era that's.
I mean, I think we could say this about almost all sports, right? I mean, boxing. I mean, we're definitely heavily focused on boxing, as we should be. I mean, this is what we love. But I feel like this happens across all sports. And, typically when it comes to sports of that nature, I mean, to make it to the top is, almost incredibly difficult. You have to, statistically it's impossible. Like only 1 to 2%, max 2%, actually make it to that elite status, right? And in a lot of ways, how, this media projects what success should look like for youth of color, right? It projects so many things that you can only be successful one of 3 things, right? Being a thug, being an athlete, or being an entertainer, right? There isn't enough other aspects out there for you to actually see, that's projected out in the media. I mean, certain sports that we see on TV, we see them every day because it's there, right? Versus, that doctor that shows up. I'm gonna ask you, right? It's a sensitive question. This individual that's actually successful, that's doing something beyond the sport, that's there to coach in a different manner.
I'm gonna ask you a sensitive question. Yeah. Can you see that the themes of exploiting black flesh or flesh of color? Yeah. That they're still pretty much relevant. Yes. And the precedent that was set with imperialism and manifest destiny.
Yes. And I think one of the biggest examples of that we can see is just when we look at, players and owners. Right. When we see fighters and, promoters, you kind of see, the colors change versus who's the line and who's the administrators, right? Mm-hmm. Who's actually running the show and who's actually participating in the show, right? And those certain things are very significant. I mean, it's stark, black, white. right? In a lot of different, avenues and a lot of different, just organizations, the NFL. How many owners? The NBA. NBA. How many owners?
Major League Baseball.
Major League. Oh my God, Major League. Major. Don't even get me started on Major League Baseball. How many actual American black players do you see on a baseball, team? It's very minimal. Torrey Hunter, last one. Kendrick.
Baseball has become less popular in
the black space,
youth,
definitely.
Space, right, in America.
It's also too that knowing the history of Major League Baseball owners.
Oh yeah, of course.
And knowing that
killing of the Negro leagues.
Just to be honest, too, looking at Dominicans, obviously, and Cubans that are flooding, and Puerto Ricans that are flooding, Afro-Latinos.
Yeah.
But
I'm an Afro-Latino.
Right, looking at Afro-Latinos, but also knowing that in some ways that if you're knowing how they look at it, the assumption is that. They feel like they could police Afro-Latinos a lot better than they could police African Americans. And perhaps that's why, because there's nothing, Major League Baseball is always showed as true face if you pay enough attention. Yeah. But looking back at boxing and whether or not, because here we have you that comes from academia, and it's got to be interesting because you're a man that fought as an amateur. You're a man that's worked as a cutman. Yeah. You've been in a professional corner. Yeah. You have an intimate look at what boxing is, and you know what boxing is about. You know about the social nuances, these weird social constructions that are going on, and so forth. Yeah. But taking that into account, and also knowing that boxing still is universally built. On the backs of the flesh of black men and Latino men.
I want to think of an example where I could think of like what you're referencing, like the sort of selling of flesh. Like we have the joke in boxing of flesh peddler.
Yeah.
For instance, it's cheaper if you're looking for a beast setter. It's cheaper to get somebody from Mexico, because you can pay him 80% of what you're paying the Mexican American or whatever American beast setter. Yeah. And that's just straight up like economics right there. Like your dollar will go further if you get a guy. That's becoming harder now with just visas and things to be able to do that. But for a long time, you just pick up a guy from Mexico and you can bring him to lose for a lot cheaper. And, it's literally it's literally imperialistic flesh peddling. And it's a pretty key example.
Yeah, no.
But then sometimes those guys end up having careers also, and it's just something that's always existed in the sport. But you can see a pretty clear-cut example.
Of course.
We don't have to look too far for it.
Yeah, and that's been operating for. I don't know how long, right? People go into, TJ, beef up their records. You take a loss, let's go in and beat up a few, and then right.
But just to play devil's advocate too, that if you're an athlete of color, you're a young black man or a young Latin man, fuck it.
If it works.
You hit, you can punch, and you can box, and you can hit and not get hit, and there's no damage to your faculties. There's going to be no damage to your life, and you'll be able to earn millions of dollars.
Oh yeah.
Off of the system that for the most part, we're looking at a civilized society that would mimic something that you would expect out of a Roman Colosseum. Yeah. That's centuries, if not eons. Of something that we would have thought that would have gotten away from. There's also too, I've always found it fascinating that I was listening to Ta-Nehisi speak today, and Ta-Nehisi had a lot of Ta-Nehisi Coates, obviously, the writer, right? And he had a lot of language where he's speaking as though he's a fighter.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it made me think that Ta-Nehisi perhaps is a fan of boxing.
Okay.
But it also spoke to me in other ways, which is if you're a person of color, there's black men, Latin men, this is a fight.
Oh yeah.
Right?
Yeah. You in it.
You're looking at boxing and that they're translating that over into life. Even obviously if you're idealizing it and you've never tasted your own blood in your mouth or gotten something in your eyes where it's stinging so bad, and you say no, you go, hey, I got 2 minutes and 20 seconds to go. I'm not gonna let them know that whatever's in my eye right now, whether it be hair product or sweat, is making me want to close my right eye so much. But I told this man I would give him 6 rounds. Yeah. Even if they're not familiar with something as intimate as that, they're still familiar with this idea of fighting your way out of a situation.
Yeah.
And perhaps that's why boxing is still so relevant, particularly for men of color.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I mean, I think there's also something to be said about, like, you know, you proving yourself, right? You going in and, you know, being able to withstand, you know, the difficulties of the sport and coming out stronger because of it. You know, I do think that that's, you know, a real thing. I do think that that's operating. I would like to see, you know, more athletes though have like these backup plans, right? You know, because there's more to just boxing, you know, in a lot of ways you can learn about life skills.
We have a dream, I have a dream, I don't mean to cut you off, but of we need to unionize this sport.
Oh, of course. And that's where I was going to get. I was literally going in that direction. So we there.
Hopefully someday we get to that point where we have some.
We should all put in work on it.
Yeah.
Listen, his father used to be around Marion, is that what it was?
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, I think that right there could literally change the game, because then there are certain rules that you have to abide by. There's, you know, benefits. There's certain things that, you know, fighters
need to have like a signatory promoter, you know, that says, okay, I'm only doing union shows from now on. I'm only signing union fighters. Yeah. And you need to have a couple of big name guys, because the thing about a big name guy, I've already made it to this point.
Yeah.
Why
you can afford that.
Why do I need to be a union now?
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah.
So you're telling me I'm paying into the benefits of all the guys that I'm beating for the next 10 years?
Yeah.
Or that I did beat, you know what I mean?
Well, not only that, but you're protecting yourself,
There's going to be challenges, but it's something that needs to happen, because in no sport is somebody more abused and used and thrown out.
Well, I think the only challenge, and I don't mean to cut you off, but I think the only challenge that's involved there is because there's been so many people that have exploited for so long and got super greedy that they're able to get away with that, right? And so because they're able to get away with that, and they figured out that algorithm to screw a fighter,
there's so much lack
and
of
then
information.
take everything from them. Yeah, exactly.
In all fairness,
and then just be like,
DK,
you're
Don
done.
King was screwing just as many fighters.
Oh, of course.
As
Bob
Bob
Arum.
We weren't talking about race.
Contract.
We were talking about money versus no money. It doesn't matter.
Bob Arum was a contract lawyer before he was a promoter.
Yeah, he went
to. He made his. He
Harvard
made,
Law, right?
Well, yeah, he was a straight lawyer.
He was an assistant district attorney.
His best friend was actually trying to be a promoter, and when he was taking a look at contracts, he's like, you know, we can get these guys for money, like a lot of it. We could sue left and right.
There's that rumor about Bob
happened.
Arum, although I won't repeat it, but maybe you've ran across it.
Yeah.
The quote, the quote about we'll count the money outside the ring and let X, Y, and Z fight inside of the ring. Now they haven't been able. I forget what writer had put that out there, but it could have been hearsay.
Yeah.
But it's certain. But I'll be honest with you.
Yeah.
Even if that was, you know, I'll say instead of just not trying to navigate it. It was that Bob Arum had said that we'll let. The niggas and spics fight inside the ring, and us Jews will fight. Will count the money outside of it.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Okay. Whether or not this is real or not,
I've just heard that. Like, I didn't know that was a Bob Arum quote, but I've heard people believe that in boxing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
like, I've heard another Italian guy tell me, find a Jew manager. That's gonna help you out. Like people just know that.
I mean, again, now we're digging deep into stereotypes, right?
But
people say that this is
I'll be honest.
Culture thing.
People would still sign with Bob, even if this. Listen, I'm gonna give Bob the benefit of the doubt and say that it's not true, right? It's just a rumor, right? It's hearsay. But even if it were true, you're still gonna sign with Bob, because here you are, you're a young black man. You're a young, you're a young Latino man.
Yeah.
You have no way of social or class mobility. You've got this guy that's done it before. He's got a proven track record. And Bob comes around and says, "I'm going to sign with you. I can give you X, Y, and Z. By the way, I've made these young men millionaires, even if I put in tens of millions of dollars in my pocket while doing so."
Yeah.
And you're going to sign with them.
Yeah.
And until that system.
So again. Yeah. Statistically, for those millionaires that he's naming, right, it's very hard to be that. Yeah. And so for every, $1 millionaire that he creates, there's a good 20 that just never made it.
Probably more.
Probably, and I'm just saying, I'm just throwing out a random number. You're right. There's probably like so many people that he's signed that just never made it. Yeah. And the most that they made under Top Rank was
10 grand probably.
10, yeah, because when you're at the lower levels and you're winning, you're not getting
$150,
anything for that purse. Yeah, you're absolutely right.
Doc,
yeah.
Did in your dissertation, did you go into statistics? Was that a large portion of the type of work?
No. So I mean, I do have a few colleagues that's what they're looking at, and I would love. Actually, I'm working on some stat stuff with my mentor now, Dr. Scott Brooks. We're working on some NBA data.
Which is probably much easier to get quantitative data.
There's one source rather than boxing.
So it's very funny because with boxing, data isn't really out there. I mean. I think it's real strategic why it's not out there. To be honest,
count money outside the ring.
To keep people from actually looking at it.
As basically proven to everybody.
Yeah.
There's a lot more money in boxing than anybody else had realized.
Yes.
And I had seen something.
Yeah. And I agree.
The owner of Jackrabbit's, Ivan here. Mm-hmm. Ivan had sent me an article that Hasbro had bought the catalog for, of all things, Death Row Records. And I want to say it was for like $2.6 billion.
Oh, wow.
It's a big amount of money.
Fisher Price?
Was it 3.8?
3.8.
Oh, Jesus.
Did you say Hasbro, Fisher Price?
Hasbro, yeah.
3.8.
Children's toys, right?
That's a big difference.
Billions of dollars, right? So, yeah, $3.8 billion.
Okay.
And we're looking at, so you got to think, well, what was the Death Row catalog worth?
Yeah.
But for us, we can think about it in a simple way, which is Apple Music downloads, plays on maybe Spotify, YouTube.
Forever.
Right.
Like these are forever anthems.
But when you're looking at the mechanisms of commerce and capitalism, goddamn well Hasbro isn't setting down that $3.8 billion unless they're getting return on investment, right? Of course. Absolutely. Of course. So if you were to ask me, what do you think the catalog is worth for Death Row? My answer would have been 3.8. Yeah. The only reason why I'm referencing it is here we have Heyman, who was very familiar with network programming.
What label did he was a music
He was
guy.
with the WB. He was with music at first, but he also was some of the brains behind the WB.
Yeah.
At that time when they had Moesha, they had Marcus Houston on television. Black syndicate programming had come to Channel 5, and understood how much money was in television.
Yeah.
And now we're looking at a guy like, you look at Leo Santa Cruz, for example, and I always say this to everybody. Leo named his son after Al Heyman, right? He's a millionaire. You know that he has a Lamborghini. I don't know if Leo would have had as much success had he not been with Al and it would have been with Bob.
Absolutely not.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And
that's a very good point.
And that Al had understood how much money was in the game on a much broader horizon and perspective versus Bob, who constantly, or maybe Bob does understand, and that's why Bob is worth $300 million. Yeah. And he's constantly telling everybody, there's not that much money in boxing. There's not much money in boxing. Well, you've accumulated $300 million of it, Bob.
Yeah.
And we know that Don King had accumulated a good chunk as well.
Yeah.
So
they're just playing. What they're doing, they're playing different segments within the industry.
They're not gonna. You're not gonna get that.
Because what Heyman did so well was bring it to like 4 television networks in its first year.
Yeah.
And now he's really on board with Fox and with Showtime, but that wasn't Aram's strategy. Aram was pay-per-view was.
Well, Bob used to have a very good relationship with HBO.
Yeah, he did. That's right. You're right about that.
Yeah, Bob had an incredible relationship with HBO.
R.I.P. HBO boxing.
Yeah, R.I.P.
Those are the good old days.
It's crazy to see that everybody else is doing so well on HBO. Yeah. But race being another thing that comes to mind. There's no doubt that Larry Merchant taking Floyd Mayweather to task, who, by the way,
do you take him to task or do you attempt to take him to task?
But he's always chastising him.
He really was.
Jim Lampley's getting on board, right? Max Kellerman is playing sort of politically correct, playing safe ground. Yeah. But here you got this guy who is the backbone of HBO, right? Who is responsible for the brains behind 24/7, which is to let's follow the athlete with the lead up to a fight, which has become the norm now. Yeah.
And every other sport has taken a version of that program.
Hard Knocks. And
you got Hard Knocks, exactly. And you have this time, right? You got this time where 50 is out and Mace and Puffy and all this stuff. This time, so it's early then up to 50, but hip hop is all of a sudden, the opulence of hip hop has gotten so big. You have this guy that's running around with a people mover with chains, making it rain.
What's a people mover?
This is like that silly little scooter with Floyd, making it rain, and you're seeing a harem of beautiful women. And
twerking and all of that.
His strip club is literally called Girl Collection.
Yeah, but it really is.
That's the name of it. He still tweets about it
all the time.
How could HBO be so silly? To
go with Triple G?
To treat, to go with Triple G.
Go ahead.
How could it be so silly to treat this guy that listen, if Floyd has made $1 billion himself, this is what I want everybody to understand out there, especially the listeners. If he's making that kind of money, a weekend in Vegas, a couple $100 million, right? Yeah. What is he doing for the casinos? They're selling out the casinos. Yeah. What's he doing for the restaurants? What's he doing? And in the most divergent ways, how many people are out there getting prostitutes? Yeah. How many people are getting bottle service at the clubs? Exactly. How many people bought outfits because they want to look fly at the fight? How many people are flying out there? They're flying the chick out there. Yeah. How many people, whatever it is. Buying jewelry.
Food.
Vegas figured that out a long time ago. That's how they became the fight capital of the world.
But there's something to be said about that, right?
He created an incredible amount of revenue.
I mean, just the networking involved. I mean, the betting is probably where they made the most money. Right. Because, you got people coming in and they're dropping money on, Mayweather's opponent or him, and then, the money that's going there.
I laugh because it's based on America's psyche, of race, right?
Of course. Everyone betting against them.
They're essentially getting themselves.
Yeah.
Right? You're
playing yourself, homie.
You're playing yourself. You got an undefeated fighter. Yeah. And you're going to get yourself by
this is the guy that's going to take it.
And by the way, Vegas is always telling you because the odds.
It's like stock promoters. The odds are always pitching a penny stock.
Oh yeah.
The odds are always with Floyd. This is your chance to get a big payout.
That's the lottery ticket, right?
That motherfucking racism is so goddamn real. Everything, all pragmatism.
Make it rain on that.
All pragmatism and logic is going to get thrown out the window. Yeah. And you're going to make that.
But then there becomes a certain point where, if you're you or me or you, and we know Floyd's gonna win, but there's no payout if we bet on Floyd because we don't have the leverage to actually get the return.
We got 10 grand to get this.
Because he's such a high favorite.
What's the odds? 10 to 1.
It's probably like 100 grand to get 6,000.
Yeah. So seriously,
so then with our $50, we're just like, fuck it.
But somebody's betting that, and that's the thing. That's why it gets so high because people are betting that. Right. And they're dropping that much money on that bet. Right. And they're saying, okay, well,
why not free money?
Exactly. Right. Well, those that have the means to do that.
But it's hard to go up against the bigger
this old sort of thing that we hear in boxing all the time, which is there's not a lot of money in boxing. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Like though, at the highest levels, you're right. There's
not a lot of money for you in boxing.
It's actually worse.
We had a whole episode on how do you make money in boxing.
That's right.
We came to the conclusion that you don't.
You don't make money.
But when we say you don't, we're talking about you don't. We're like you, Garrity, you, Flavio. Like that's what we're talking about. Us in that chimed in.
But we don't. It's worse than the real world.
Hotel owners.
Oh no, it's way worse.
We're looking at the wealth distribution of boxing versus the wealth distribution of society as a whole, right? Yeah. And the 1/3 of the 1%.
I mean, it kind of mimics American. It's like this Americanized, way of making it, right? And if you make it to the top, then you're just gonna take it all from there, right? Yeah. Because you have the means to do that. I mean, I feel like boxing is operating just as much as the wage gap that America's operating in, right? If you can make that money exponentially high, right, and the payout is so high and you pay people what you want, then you've just accumulated so much wealth right there that it's just like, well,
it's also what you know.
Right?
What you know by proxy.
Yeah.
Right. If you're say you're born into a family and both parents are college educated, they have graduate level degrees. And so there's going to be language that's being used in the household, myopic or qualitative versus qualitative, whatever whatever the hell it is.
Nature versus nurture.
Right. So you're being exposed to all these things, even if it's in passing, because you hear mom and dad having a conversation about.
You've introduced me to more words on this season. You didn't go to college.
I didn't go to.
You read that yourself.
I'm autodidactic. I got bored and read a bunch of books. But that being said, we know by proxy that they're going to have access to more knowledge.
Yeah.
With fighters, when fighters all of a sudden know that there's money in the game, right?
Yeah.
Because I see so many young fighters. And it's also
who are good examples. I want to know. Did you do any research? Who are good examples of guys that realized, okay, I'm taking toll on that portion of the business. Like, I'm not just getting my purse. I'm taking toll on merch sales at the MGM. I'm taking, you know what I mean? Like who are?
Floyd is the only one that does that. He gets merch. He
but
gets
like
Coke.
we would like to see these boxers get a little bit more of the. When we're talking about the
I think
inequality of wealth.
I think he set the tone because I mean you still got your Canelos.
Devin is
Devin Haney,
the way that he came out.
I mean, he set the tone.
What's Devin Haney doing in that regard as far as
Devin? I think Devin decided that he was going to go pro when he was under 17.
Yeah.
His father, who was a man of means, who came from Oakland, though.
Yeah, I think.
Right?
If I'm not mistaken,
He's from the Bay.
Yeah.
Definitely not a silver spoon. The rough life. Involved in music and so forth to get his money. Makes great decisions. Ends up accumulating wealth.
Yeah.
Is looking after a young Devin, business-minded enough, savvy enough to say, you know what? We don't need to sign Devin with a big promoter right now. I can sponsor his career. I can make sure that he looks fly. I could give him a certain car to hold him down. I can make sure that he has a condo and so forth. And when the time comes, I want to say the DAZN contract was $2 million, which if not more, I don't know.
I mean, I don't know.
To be fair,
but that happens a lot actually.
That's what happens in a lot of Mexican American families of means who have fighters. I know kids that dads can support them.
The old heads.
And they take them through, like we said it in a negative light earlier about the Tijuana shows to build up the career. But it's the same kind of concept as a privately funded career where we're going to break even or we're going to lose a little bit of money. Like being like an angel investor in a startup company. The dad or the sponsor or the manager is investing in that kid, and that's his only paycheck's coming from that manager, from that sponsor. For the larger payout. The problem is we're dealing with humans, not a cap table. So a lot of things can go wrong, and a lot of people can't get.
Some people get greedy and they start doing things, pinching pennies. I mean, those things happen. I mean, but it's interesting because I keep bringing up my mentor. But in his work, he wrote a book called Black Men Can't Shoot, and that's like one of the things that he was also focused in. And that was like, you have these old heads, that are, they notice that there's some ability there and they'll bring them in and they'll be like, yo, I'm going to try to, create these networks, right? I know certain people that know people, right?
That's like Jack and Jill, but on the street level.
Exactly.
Right.
And so it's like, okay, well, I'm going to, create this image and help them create an image. We're going to brand that image and then we're going to try to take them to the next level, because if they make it, then I'm gonna get a percentage of that.
You're talking about something that I was joking with, with somebody about this. I'd gone to the piano recital, and my daughter plays the piano, and now I was talking about the piano recital. For the most part, was a very white neighborhood, right?
Okay.
In
Laguna Beach.
Yeah, over there in Laguna Beach, and the joke is that the expectation for perfection with black children, right? So my daughter did really well. She performed perfectly. She has a black grandmother, right? So like black grandma's gonna crack, not always, but it's gonna be on her, right? So I was talking about this idea of that in black communities, because you can't have mediocrity. Because if you can't have,
is that a grandmother thing? Let me ask. Is that a grandmother thing, or is that just?
I'm talking about it
because the way you mentioned
in
it,
reference
I was
to
thinking
young black athletes that are in black communities that have They have the capability.
Yeah.
They have you look at them and say there could be a future there.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you have something that comes in, which could be, like you said, an OG or someone that's looking after them. And that force of discipline, but that discipline, to be honest, is something that is not going to be experienced in any other community besides maybe a Black or Latino community or community of poverty, which is they're hoping that young child will get put on.
Yeah.
That they're going to make it.
And
that is going to translate to bread
Yeah.
and opportunity for them in the future, and it's something that's exclusive to an experience of folks in poverty, and you see it so much in the Black community. I think much more so than other communities. I'm sure you see it in Latin communities too.
Yeah.
But
I mean, it's a thing, but yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, that is, I mean.
Because some of these white kids, man, they were butchering the goddamn piano. I was like, damn. Now, I'm not saying, but I was saying,
they're juggling tennis.
If you've ever gone to, if you go to a talent show, you can look at the Showtime at the Apollo, Mr. Sandman, right? And so, like, if you're not good at the Apollo, you get Sandman is going to come out. He's going to boo you. But right. Versus like the participation trophy of no, it's okay. Just do your best. Don't worry about it because you got Harvard Westlake and
I forgot who was talking about.
You got Loyola Marymount.
It was a Black athlete that would not let his daughters get a participation ribbon. He's like, oh no, you not rip that up. We getting rid of that. Because you wasn't good enough to be the winner.
Listen, I worked with Kobe Bryant. I trained Kobe for a little bit, right?
Okay.
And I trained his kids
Secret's out.
the secret's out. and I trained
what?
And I trained his kids a little bit.
He taught him the jump shot.
I wish. No, Kobe wanted to learn how to box, and he wanted his kids to learn how to box. Anyways, no, not enough because I'm still here, right? So the expectation, even of his kids, was an expectation of perfection, which you can understand. Which is
he's the guy that shows up an hour early to practice.
Hour early and so forth. And Kobe is the man, and
the
discipline that he has. But I'm saying this is definitely something that you see exclusively to. Listen, here in the east side of Long Beach, you're going to see it a lot. Like, hey, when he gets on and he gets on. And then the caricature of I want to say advice that comes along with that, because that's a whole nother thing. Leave this alone, which is absolutely very natural to a young man, which is not to leave young women alone. And then all of a sudden you have an older man that's saying, young blood, what you don't need to have is to be, chasing around these young women because they're gonna. And then every fucking misogynistic trope is gonna follow, because which is a reflection of whatever it is that his past trauma or his dealing with this stuff.
Or it's just an easy way for him to pass on by saying the trope. He really is trying to tell the kid to be a good kid, maybe, but it's easier.
Young men are going to chase. Young men are going to chase girls.
The woman's fault.
I can never. Listen,
but he wants to get.
I just don't think. I'm gonna keep it 100.
I see what he's saying.
I don't think that if you're looking at very privileged white communities, that you're looking at young white football prospects. And they're looking at the young white quarterback and they're saying, Tanner. Leave Brittany and Ashley alone because they're going to ruin your career and you're never going to amount to anything because all you care about is getting with Brittany. And I'm sure it happens not in privileged communities. I'm absolutely 100% sure it happens in white rural communities that are of poverty, right? There's no idea they're saying to leave Brittany and Ashley alone because they want to get out of
Ashley Lynn, first of all.
Ashley Lynn.
No, I'm kidding.
Brittany Jackson.
So, but it's Brittany, but spelled super fucked up.
But but it is certainly something that you see. I mean, even the
well, it's just it's kind of a reality. I mean, it's kind of moving. I feel like it's kind of all over the place at that point, right? But I think at the end of it is like, okay, there's something about this fighter or something about this athlete, right? That, you're trying to stop them from moving down certain avenues, right? And by, these scare tactics, I feel like they tend to be more of, right? It's trying to avoid getting into a situation that leads them.
It seems more prevalent in Black communities.
Exactly. And I agree. I feel like you see a lot more of that, but that attention is being put on this person because they are perceived to have that ability. Whereas it's kind of missing on, the other side where, there is a kid that's, fighting through all these things and will be successful. And then it's kind of funny because then you'll see certain people, if it's not as successful as this kid over there, then you see everybody transition to that one, right? And then it kind of shifts. But I feel like that happens just across the board, like the old heads, that's a real thing, but people tend to go where, they perceive success happening, right? It's just like fans in any sport, right?
Yeah.
They go where the winners are.
The possibility.
Right? They're going where the losers are, right? The win, and in a sport like boxing, winning matters.
Absolutely.
If you lose once, it's like you caught the plague, and that's like super problematic, right? Because, in a lot of ways, people treat that as, that loss, that's gonna mess up your whole career, like you shouldn't have lost, and this is like, it's one damn loss, right? The person is still talented, right? And so it just, there's so many variables and moving parts to that it's really hard to predict. But I do agree. I tend to think that,
even that
you see that
you can
more.
look at Chuck Liddell, who has I'm gonna say almost a 500 career.
Losses don't matter.
Right.
And you can see
this is a boxing unique.
UFC, damn near everyone comes in with a loss, right? In boxing,
and that's okay,
Yeah, and that's fine. Like, you see like people 4 losses on their records and they're still like beastly. Look at McGregor. Phil has like a few losses, right?
But it's different, I think, because there is an expectation for black fighters and
Yeah.
I think even more so.
It's not about black fighters. It's about.
You can
see that.
You can be a Latino fighter and absolutely get losses, and as long as you showed up and went out on your shield, you're straight.
Yeah.
Right.
I think it's the boxing thing that a loss really damaged you.
Yeah.
I don't think it's a race thing.
Look at Chavez against Danny Jacobs, right? Everybody's obviously, you look at
Chavez is a joke.
Chavez's dad.
You have a post though.
Oh yeah, that was so funny.
That was hilarious.
The meme world, the boxing meme world was so so good on that.
We were watching it, and it's a mixed crowd. We have black folks here, Mexican folks that are watching it, but like Mexican folks is really taking it, taking it hard,
pissed off.
And
so they were throwing bottles into the ring and hitting people with them.
But what they're taking to heart is like they're looking at him as somehow as being an extension of them. In that ring.
Well, that goes back to that whole nationalism.
But he could have lost.
That goes right back to it.
Chavez could have lost. You're Mexican. You're
If
Mexican.
he would have went out on his shield.
And
he would have been fine. Because they would have said he went out like a guerrero, right? He went out like a warrior, right? Yeah. Versus.
But but if Chavez, first off, he doesn't make weight.
No, he's a kid of privilege.
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
And but like
his dad was already world champion.
His dad's a legend. It's not like he's a legendary fighter. Like he's gonna live forever, right?
He had rich people problems actually. He didn't have he had like dad was so successful and dad was on drugs because he was already that kind of problem. That was it,
I don't want to say that that's going to happen with all fighters. I've recently
I don't
Fernando Vargas has had his sons in the gym sparring.
Here? I've seen his sons fight amateur
more down
shows
to earth.
quite a bit.
And I see Fernando Vargas with the sons all the time. I'll be real with you.
His sons are probably going to be better
love
than
the
him.
way that Fernando Vargas moves his sons. Which is he knows there's a time and a place for everything, and he also puts them in there with real work. And he's got them fighting all the time.
I think his sons are going to be better than him.
Fernando Vargas versus Isais Cortez is one of my.
You can only hope,
fights.
A father can only hope,
right?
It's cool.
But I've seen his sons fight quite a few times.
Emiliano is the one. I want to say he's the youngest one, but I saw him fight in Compton this weekend.
Okay.
I thought that he had won the fight, but
I remember when Shane Mosley.
He's a pleasure to watch.
Shane Mosley's son fought, the junior.
He
was all over the.
It's a little different. A little different than.
I used to be around Shane Mosley.
Exactly.
Shane Mosley.
But he was pretty good. But
he's still fighting. He's actually he got with Justin Gambler. In Las Vegas at City Boxing.
Didn't he get busted with PEDs?
He got busted with
it was like a something.
It was something that wasn't like a real performance enhancing drug.
It was like a.
It was like he had taken
cortisone or something weird like that. I don't know.
It was something that like they suspended for a year. It wasn't like
he got suspended.
It wasn't like clenbuterol or Anavar or.
You mean the meat? Yeah, carne asada. He took some back, and it was just all of a sudden. The Mexican meat.
Do people how can people follow you on social media? You got
say it again.
Do you got any social media that people can follow you at?
It's Doc Zayas 11. I'm on IG, Facebook. I'm on there. Dr. Isais Wellington Smith.
And you have a book that's coming out?
I do. I'm working on it right now. You know, books are works in progress. There's a lot there, but just knuckling down. I mean, my dissertation was like the foundation of it. So like I was explaining earlier, I definitely don't want it to be too academic. I want my book to be able to be read by some of the people that I worked with. And so, typically when, books are too academic, people tend to like lose interest, and I want them to be sucked in from like the beginning.
If you love the sport, you're gonna want to read this thing, right? You don't want.
Of course. And so that's why I'm kind of like.
That's good. We appreciate that.
Bringing that. Because I love sociology, but you don't need to read someone else's dissertation to understand what I'm talking about, and I think that's the point. And so going back and doing quite a few edits to like my dissertation, I think, and just kind of refining it, give me a pretty good, solid idea within the next, hopefully, year in terms of proposals and what that'll look like.
Are there any writers that you think that everybody should be reading right now, or that for the boxing audience out there that probably don't have access to academia the way that obviously you have a PhD,
there's quite a few
masters. So.
The thing about some of the boxing like works now is like some of them are a little bit older. I like a book called Come Out Swinging. That's a pretty good one. I have some humongous reservations about what Quant's reading, but I think if you were to read his work, Body and Soul, it can kind of give you an idea of what not to do.
The French writer?
Louis Waquant. And then
he's the one that went to the gym in Philadelphia.
In Chicago.
That's right.
And then there's so much.
I'll check this out.
It's kind of difficult reading. But
never mind, I won't check it out.
France is the mecca of postmodernism.
So his you get a sentence that's like a paragraph long and commas everywhere. But I mean,
he's probably looking at Sartre and Foucault.
Translating to English didn't help the whole.
His I want to say his mentor was Bourdieu. So Bourdieu, very similar style. My mentor is Dr. Scott Brooks.
I had wanted to ask you about your mentor actually.
So
how did you get to come to know him? Is he tied into boxing? Is he just someone through your work?
So he actually has done some research on Sugar Ray Robinson with one of his mentors, Kenneth Shropshire. He did some work on Sugar Ray Robinson, which people should read. I cannot, for the life of me, remember the title right now, and I apologize. But if you were to look up Kenneth Shropshire, very well known, and Sugar Ray Robinson, and you'll find it.
It's spelled like how it sounds, Shropshire.
Shropshire.
Okay.
So exactly, it's like
that sounds like
SH.
We don't even know how that sounds.
Like a
Shrop, and then Shire, so my mentor, he doesn't necessarily focus that much on boxing. He's really looked at basketball in Philadelphia and basketball, and that's who I'm working with in terms of NBA data. But his name is Dr. Scott Brooks. He has a book out called Black Men Can't Shoot, which there's a lot of similarities in basketball with boxing.
Where does that name come from?
What
point in the book is it highlighted?
So he's pretty much saying white men can't jump. It's kind of like a play on that.
Right.
And so he's looking at there's this idea
is there a stigma that black men can't shoot? Is that a thing?
They're saying black men can't shoot 3-pointers.
And so that's
that black man can't.
Cannot shoot.
And so it's like the 3-pointers is kind of like a white,
It's the niche that the white guys have found successful.
There's a lot. I mean, it's
okay.
Back to racial stereotypes. Black men can be a quarterback. Right.
Exactly. So it's like that play.
Okay. I didn't know that exists in basketball. I know the quarterback thing for sure. But I didn't know that. Okay.
And so and like if you're trying to get real academic, like my other mentor, Dr. Wayne Breckus, he has a book. Plenty of books out on like identity and cognition, and I mean, his work is just all over. And then another one, Dr. Amelia Dache and Dr. Joan Hermsen.
And these mentors are people you met in your studies?
Well, these are people that allowed my dissertation to go through.
Oh,
it was like, they were on my committee.
So they're at the university that you...
Well, they're at the University of Missouri. I teach at the Southern Illinois University, Edwardsville, which isn't too far from, Mizzou, University of Missouri. But it's like far enough. It's still like a couple hours away from where I live in St. Louis. And so, yeah, I mean, like a lot of their work, being a research, one university, it tends to kind of create like the foundation of how I came up with a lot of my stuff. So. And
then one quick last question: any St. Louis prospects that you've been watching in the gyms?
Not really. It's really funny because we were talking about this earlier, and like. St. Louis used to kind of be like a pretty well-known city.
Yeah. Kevin Cunningham and
Devin Alexander, Spinks brothers, right?
Devin's brother's fighting a lot. He's like he's
he
fought Anthony Sims, the magician.
Oh, that's okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I can't remember, but he was incarcerated, got out. But he's a great opponent. He comes with it. But obviously, coming off the incarceration.
But it's odd because it's kind of like you start to see.
I want to say Von Alexander is his name.
Von Alexander?
Yeah. Okay. Devin's brother.
But you kind of see this fitness boxing kind of took over, it's like everywhere, right? And it's like.
Well, that's
really
how you charge Kobe Bryant $500 an hour.
Right?
Oh, this was years ago, before all the...
before you knew your market value?
Before all the box houses. And what are the other names of them? Rumble.
Right.
Before all of them had showed up.
Yeah. So I mean, that's a big thing out there.
That's crazy,
just everywhere, though.
In a very... I'm going to say something that's kind of like probably politically not cool, right? But like in a weird way, that's like a cultural appropriation, maybe.
I think that could be,
Yeah, like just, and it's also like this weird like.
So I have an interesting
boxing ghetto voyeurism, like I'm boxed like that. Your ass is not coming down to no gym and boxing.
There's an organization I want to get familiarized with, and it's going to come out in another podcast episode. Actually, we touched on it with my friend Chris Gugliari, who works at one of these gyms. But there's an organization called Gloves Not Guns, and the idea behind it is that we need to get these ritzy gyms that are doing this boxer tourism voyeurism type deal to be a little more involved with the amateur boxing and kind of
it's just not going to work.
Listen, he's doing a great job at it.
I'm not going to shut it down
I'm teasing, but
you're the same man that said, I wish that Latinos would show up more to jury duty and things would be better. I said, how many times you showed up to jury duty? And you're like, you said 0 times.
Well, so I said that's the problem with the judicial
So that's the attitude that I know.
I think I got like a year left before they're going to hit me back up.
It's hard for us to take the judicial
Do you remember that conversation?
To task if you're not participating in it.
I was stuck in jury duty and I couldn't make this.
I said that's the whitest thing I've ever heard.
And then he goes, I wish brown folks would show up to jury duty and change the thing. I was like, so how many times have you gone? Oh, I've never gone.
I said only white people go to jury duty. Is what I said. But listen,
and there's a warrant out for your arrest right now.
Right. But in order to change the judicial system, people got to be better. And I know on this self-reflection, if I get called now, I'll go. But definitely, I'm just saying that there's a long history of liberals, or either not liberals, but people being sort of casual observers. And listen, boxing gyms need help.
Yeah, they
especially
really do.
Not Rumble.
Yeah.
Not
like $70 a head, kind of thing.
Yeah, right. Those gyms don't need help.
But honestly, we need help too, because we need to start charging $70 a head. I need help right now. I need to start making this money.
Man. They're charging $125 an hour.
I know.
But
come on, Brittany Lynn, right?
Well, we met. Well, that was actually a joke on poor white America.
Oh, okay.
But that was niche.
So that's not going to work.
That's not going to work.
Alana.
No, because in poor white America, they had these names with a dash in it. You know, it's like Jaden Lynn or what are these sort of adding.
Brittany Marie.
Right. In a crazy way too, because it's not like you guys remember. It's not like everybody's kind of doing it.
Yeah.
I mean, even you remember? Did you guys see the footage of? Listen, I love Meek Mill. Right, like Nightmares and
I don't think so.
But Meek Mill hitting the bag.
Oh, I did see that.
Yeah, like
it was the sorriest thing I've
You're
ever
right,
seen.
right. So, Dreams and Nightmares is like, you know, like Meek is the man, right?
But I saw Snoop Dogg.
Right.
It goes across cultural barriers.
Uncle Snoop is not. Snoop hits a bag like George Foreman, like Mike Tyson in '88.
Nah, but Meek Mill was terrible. Like it was like hitting that mini bag, like he was barely moving.
I remember seeing Travis Scott warm up on pads.
So it's not like everybody could, has hands, but it's.
Well, now you're playing into if you were. But it's stereotype that a black man can do it because a white man can't.
It's very interesting though that that suburban America in New York and these I always think about this. You got all the transients from the flyover states that end up in the metropolitan areas that all go blue. I'm just like, just go back home so maybe you could add some diversity to the vote. But they're so attracted to boxing and are ending up in these boutique boxing gyms.
I get Snapchats from girls I knew from college saying boxing class today. I was like, sweet.
No, I mean, but it's that's a real big IG thing too, right? Like you got a lot of people taking photos in these gyms and doing these classes.
It's perfect for the narcissism of the social media platform.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, it's audible. It's got
that's right. But it was a separate time.
$25 a class to do that. Not bad for that class. Was not that hard to do.
But it was funny because everybody at that gym had their own separate times where they were really going at it. Remember? It'd be the times where there wasn't classes, we gonna be sparring and training and
all the people that worked there had been a boxer in different states.
Yeah.
You also you look at someone hitting pads that doesn't know what they're doing, but still you got noise. Yeah. You got movement. If a woman is doing it, her body's moving to a certain place. She's rolling and cracking. Hair is flying. It is perfect for social media.
It's all about the hair, definitely.
It is there's
the slow-mo cams.
Nothing else that I could think of that
has nothing to do with yoga pants. It's the hair.
Some just regular person that wants to deal with boxing. There's nothing else I can think of. Man.
Speaking of yoga pants,
this is from
Zara. A little tight.
Everything's tight on me after the holidays.
Right. I'm looking at myself. Oh man.
All right.
I need to hit that gym.
Right. Well, shit.
So we got workout tomorrow.
Yeah.
Here.
Okay. Yeah, I won't be here.
Yeah.
Hell no. I got jury duty.
When you,
I was sure.
All right. We're just on Tuesday, but
we spy on him and we hear he says I'm a black nationalist. Like he's just trying to say anything to get out of it.
Yeah.
You show up reading Khalid Muhammad.
Yeah.
I'm trying to figure out what I gotta do to get out of it. I showed up with a bullet and it didn't work. All right, so you know what I mean?
Oh man.
All right.
But no, man. Thank you guys. It was fun.
Thank you for coming, man.
We'd love to do it again, man.
We definitely need to do it again. I think there's so many more things I'd love to chat about with you and learn from you.
Yeah. Anytime.
I hope to hit up some of those books and
get
a little bit based for the next conversation we have.
Yeah, and I think I get a few books here and there for free.
Do you have an ask of the listening audience? Just something you want to ask them to do or look into or just anything?
I think just kind of if you're that interested in wanting to know some of the inside games, definitely just go and look for some boxing books out there. Some of the older ones. I think Black Lights is one of my favorites, and just kind of get the overall view of some of the structures involved, and hell, if you're interested in any sociology, you can come and find me at any point and be willing to help, so that people can kind of get a deeper glimpse into, just how society is operating with the sport that we love so much. So
Trisha Rose comes to mind.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I don't think I know
She's
that.
from Harvard.
Okay.
She talks about hip hop and sociology.
Okay. Well, that's kind of time.
Well, we
hey, yeah, thank you.
Thank you,
man. Thank you.
Appreciate you guys for tuning in and listening and watching this podcast. Go ahead and search any of those great books that
and hit the subscribe button and
that Doc had mentioned, and see you guys next time.
Follow us,
right? Follow us and see you guys next time on our next episode. Thank you.